The atmosphere in the courtroom was electric, charged with a palpable tension that could be felt as soon as one stepped through the heavy wooden doors. Every seat was occupied, the crowd a mosaic of anxious faces, all eyes fixated on the defendant's table where Michael Hanover stood. His appearance was striking, broad-shouldered, hair slicked back, dressed in a suit whose cost was a stark reminder of the disparity between his world and that of the ordinary people he had deceived. Michael's entrance was nothing short of theatrical. As he strode into the courtroom, there was a swagger in his step, a smirk playing on his lips that seemed to mock the very proceedings he was a part of. It was clear Michael was not just physically imposing, but his demeanor suggested he was untouched by the gravity of the situation. This was a man who had once been celebrated as the titan of the financial industry. Hanover Wealth Management, under his leadership, had been a beacon of financial brilliance, drawing in clients with the promise of unparalleled returns. But beneath the polished exterior and the glossy brochures lay a web of deceit that had entangled countless unsuspecting serfdoms in financial ruin. Today, however, the facade was beginning to crumble. As Michael took his place at the defendant's table, flipping through his notes with feigned indifference, the room's atmosphere thickened. Whispers circulated, recounting tales of lost life savings, homes, and futures, all because of the man who now sat before them, seemingly unconcerned. Judge Linda Moreno entered the courtroom, and her presence immediately commanded respect. Known for her fairness and integrity, her arrival prompted everyone to rise. Everyone, that is, except for Michael. He remained seated, an act of defiance that did not go unnoticed. His lawyer quickly leaned in, whispering urgently, but Michael dismissed him with a nonchalant wave of his hand. The judge's gaze swept across the room, stern and authoritative, before settling on Michael. Though she did not comment on his disrespect immediately, the tension it added was unmistakable. "You may be seated," she announced, her voice resonating with authority that seemed to momentarily pierce the heavy curtain of anticipation hanging over the room. As the crowd settled, the stage was set for a trial that was not just a legal showdown, but a public reckoning for a man whose actions had shattered lives. The courtroom, a crucible of justice, was about to witness the unraveling of Michael Hanover. Michael Hanover's journey from revered financier to disgraced defendant is a tale of unchecked ambition and egregious misconduct. The courtroom listened intently as the prosecutor outlined Michael's once shining career. Hanover Wealth Management, under his leadership, had epitomized financial success. He offered the allure of high returns and security, drawing in middle-class families and elderly retirees alike. However, behind the facade of success lay a grim reality. The prosecution painted a picture of a man who, driven by greed, had systematically deceived those who trusted him most. Investor stories began to unfold, detailing how they were charmed by Michael's charisma and promises. Many had invested their life savings, drawn in by the glossy brochures and Michael's convincing assurances of a secure financial future. As the evidence mounted, the courtroom saw the extent of the betrayal. Documents and emails were presented showing Michael's direct involvement in the manipulation of investment reports and his orders to beautify the financial statements to continue attracting unsuspecting clients. It was revealed that he had siphoned millions into offshore accounts, funding an extravagant lifestyle filled with luxury cars, yachts, and exclusive properties. Witnesses took the stand, their voices filled with emotion as they recounted the moment they learned their investments were worthless. An elderly couple described how their dreams of a peaceful retirement turned into a nightmare of financial insecurity and despair. A middle-aged woman, tears in her eyes, spoke of having to pull her children out of college, unable to afford the tuition any longer because of the losses incurred. As the reality of Michael's actions settled over the courtroom, the atmosphere thickened with a mix of anger and sorrow. The once respected financier sat, his face an impassive mask, as his world crumbled publicly. His previous air of arrogance slowly evaporated, replaced by the weight of undeniable evidence and the palpable disdain of those he had wronged. The prosecutor concluded the session with a poignant statement, emphasizing that Michael's fraudulent schemes were not just a series of financial crimes, but a profound betrayal of trust that had shattered lives. The court adjourned, leaving a heavy silence hanging over the room, a community reeling from the revelations of greed and deception that had hit too close to home. As the trial progressed into its third day, the courtroom dynamics shifted dramatically. The focus turned towards the testimonies of financial experts and forensic accountants who began to dissect the intricate web of deceit spun by Michael Hanover. One expert, Dr. Emily Robertson, presented a detailed analysis of the fraudulent activities. She explained how Michael and his team created fake investment opportunities complete with forged documents and fictitious returns. These were not mere oversights or poor financial decisions, Dr. Robertson emphasized. These were calculated moves designed to deceive. The courtroom was silent as the gravity of the manipulation was laid bare. Screens displayed emails and transactions that traced the flow of money from investors to offshore accounts, clearly illustrating Michael's direct involvement. The evidence was damning, each piece building on the last, painting a picture of a man who had orchestrated one of the largest financial frauds in recent history. Another poignant moment came when a former employee of Hanover Wealth Management took the stand. With a trembling voice, Jessica Sanders recounted how she was instructed to alter financial statements. I knew it was wrong, but the pressure from Michael was immense. He made it clear that our jobs depended on maintaining the facade, she confessed. As Jessica spoke, the impact of Michael's actions on his employees was also highlighted. Many of them, young professionals who had trusted Michael as a mentor, were left jobless and disgraced, their careers tarnished by the scandal. The betrayal extended beyond the investors to those who had unknowingly helped perpetrate the fraud under Michael's directive. The prosecutor then shifted the focus back to the victims, calling several more to testify. Each story added layers to the narrative of devastation. An elderly veteran, his voice steady but filled with indignation, spoke of losing his life savings. I served my country for decades, and he wiped out my retirement in months. He stated, his disappointment palpable. The final testimony of the day was from a financial regulator who outlined the numerous red flags that had been ignored or missed, partly due to Michael's manipulation of regulatory processes. He not only deceived his clients, but he also undermined the integrity of our financial oversight, the regulator declared. As the court adjourned for the day, the weight of the testimonies lingered in the air. Michael Hanover, once a figure of financial genius, now sat isolated and diminished, his earlier arrogance replaced by a growing realization of the impending consequences of his actions. The courtroom emptied slowly, the spectators and jurors alike somberly reflecting on the day's revelations. The fourth day of the trial began with a sense of foreboding as Michael Hanover's defense team attempted to counter the overwhelming evidence presented against him. Their strategy focused on discrediting the witnesses and suggesting that Michael's actions were typical business practices that were unfortunately misinterpreted due to a challenging economic climate. The courtroom was packed as the defense called their first witness, a renowned economist who argued that Michael's investment strategies were aggressive but not necessarily illegal. In a volatile market, high risk can lead to high returns. Mr. Hanover was optimistic, not deceitful, he stated confidently. However, under cross-examination, the prosecutor dismantled his arguments, highlighting discrepancies and outright fabrications in the financial models used by Hanover Wealth Management. Next, Michael himself took the stand, dressed impeccably in a dark suit, trying to salvage his reputation. His testimony was smooth, rehearsed. He spoke of his intentions to revolutionize investment strategies and insisted that any losses were the result of market downturns, not fraud. I was blindsided by the economic collapse, just like everyone else, Michael asserted, his voice steady but lacking genuine remorse. The turning point came when the prosecution cross-examined Michael. They presented wiretapped phone conversations that revealed Michael discussing ways to hide losses and manipulate earnings reports. The courtroom was tense as the recordings played, Michael's voice clear, discussing unethical practices and joking about the gullibility of his investors. One particularly damning piece of evidence was a recorded meeting in which Michael was heard saying, "As long as the cash flow keeps up, we can keep this charade going for years." This statement elicited audible gasps from the courtroom, and even Michael's composed demeanor faltered slightly under the weight of his own words. The prosecution then called a forensic accountant who systematically laid out the flow of funds from investors directly into Michael's personal accounts, disproving his claims of reinvestment into the business. Charts and graphs flashed on screens, showing the discrepancies between reported earnings and actual financial statements. As the day drew to a close, the impact of the evidence was undeniable. Michael's attempts to portray himself as a victim of circumstances crumbled under the mountain of proof of his intentional deception. The jury's expressions were grave, reflecting the seriousness of the fraud that had been methodically unveiled. The session ended with a powerful closing argument from the prosecutor, who implored the jury to see Michael not as a businessman caught in an unfortunate situation, but as a manipulator who exploited trust for personal gain. This was not business, the prosecutor concluded. The final day of Michael Hanover's trial arrived with a heavy air of expectation. The courtroom was filled to the brim, the tension palpable as everyone awaited the jury's decision. After weeks of testimonies, evidence, and heated arguments, the moment of truth was upon them. The jury, having deliberated for hours, finally entered the room. Their faces were somber, reflecting the gravity of the decision they had reached. As they took their seats, a hush fell over the courtroom. The foreperson stood up, a piece of paper in hand, and delivered the verdict: guilty on all counts. A collective sigh mixed with murmurs of relief and disbelief swept through the spectators. Michael's face, once arrogant and defiant, now displayed a flicker of shock. His lawyers quickly whispered among themselves, likely discussing the immediate steps for an appeal. Judge Linda Moreno asked Michael to stand as she prepared to deliver the sentence. Her voice was firm and devoid of emotion, but her words carried a weight that resonated throughout the room. Michael Hanover, you have been found guilty of multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. Your actions have caused immense suffering to countless individuals who trusted you with their life savings. The judge continued, outlining the consequences of Michael's actions, not just on his victims, but on the integrity of the financial system as a whole. This court has a duty to uphold justice and ensure that such egregious violations of trust are met with corresponding seriousness. She then pronounced the sentence: you are hereby sentenced to 30 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Additionally, all your assets will be seized and liquidated to provide restitution to the victims of your crimes. The courtroom erupted in a buzz of reactions as the sentence was delivered. Some of Michael's victims, who had attended every day of the trial, wept openly, their tears a mix of relief and sorrow. Others embraced, comforting each other over the long-awaited closure. As the bailiffs led Michael away in handcuffs, the reality of his new life behind bars seemed to finally hit him. His confident demeanor crumbled, replaced by a look of resignation. The crowd watched in silence, a complex mixture of emotions filling the room. Outside the courtroom, media swarmed the victims and legal teams, eager to capture their reactions for the evening news. The story of Michael Hanover, once a titan of the financial world, now a convicted felon, served as a stark reminder of the consequences of greed and deception. The trial, while closed, left a lasting impact on all who witnessed it. It was a poignant demonstration of justice served, but also a somber reflection on the damage inflicted by one man's ambition gone awry. For Judge Moreno, the case was a reaffirmation of her commitment to the law, ensuring that those who betray public trust face the full force of justice. The aftermath of Michael Hanover's sentencing rippled through the community and the financial world, leaving a legacy of caution and a renewed focus on ethical practices. The trial, a spectacle that captured national attention, not only concluded with Michael's incarceration, but also sparked widespread discussions on corporate responsibility and the moral obligations of financial leaders. In the weeks following the trial, several financial regulatory bodies announced new initiatives aimed at tightening oversight of investment practices. Seminars and workshops on ethical investing started cropping up, aimed at educating both new and seasoned investors about the signs of fraudulent schemes. Local community groups organized forums where victims of financial fraud shared their stories, helping others learn from their experiences. These forums became a healing space for many, providing support and understanding from peers who had faced similar devastations. Back in the courtroom, Judge Linda Moreno's decision was hailed as a benchmark for justice in financial crimes. Her firm handling of the case set a precedent that no level of power or wealth could shield wrongdoers from the consequences of their actions. Legal analysts praised her for her balanced approach and her ability to remain impartial, despite the high-profile nature of the case. For the victims, the end of the trial was a closure, though the emotional and financial scars remained. Recovery was slow. Many had to rebuild their lives from scratch, learning to manage their finances all over again with a much more cautious approach. Community trust funds were set up to assist those hardest hit, and local charities provided additional support. Michael Hanover, meanwhile, began his new life in prison. Cut off from the world he once dominated, he had time to reflect on the ruin he had caused. Reports surfaced that he was cooperating with authorities, providing information on other fraudulent activities in the financial sector, perhaps in a bid to redeem himself or shorten his sentence. The broader societal impact of the trial was significant. It served as a stark reminder of the fine line between ambition and greed, and the vital importance of transparency and accountability in business practices. Universities and business schools developed case studies based on the trial, using it as a teaching tool for future financiers about the ethical boundaries of investment and risk. Years later, the Hanover case still resonated in lectures on business ethics and policy discussions, and in the cautionary tale told to novice investors. The financial landscape had been indelibly changed, marked by a scandal that underscored the enduring value of integrity in the pursuit of success. Judge Moreno continued her judicial career, respected and admired for her commitment to upholding the law. Her rulings in subsequent cases often referred back to the principles established during the Hanover trial, reminding all that the law is the ultimate guardian of societal trust. As for the community, while it had been deeply scarred by the betrayal, it gradually healed, strengthened by a collective resolve to demand and uphold higher standards in all forms of governance, ensuring that the painful lessons of the past were not forgotten. This story of Michael Hanover's downfall from a revered financial mogul to a convicted felon serves as a poignant reminder of the critical importance of integrity in business. It underscores the devastating impact that greed and deception can have, not just on individuals, but on entire communities. and the financial system at large. The trial of Michael Hanover highlights the principle that no amount of wealth or influence can shield one from the consequences of unethical behavior. Let this be a lesson to all. Uphold ethical standards in all dealings, respect the law, and understand that your actions have a broader impact on society. We must strive to foster transparency and accountability, particularly in sectors as influential as finance. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and comment below with your thoughts or similar experiences. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more insightful stories and lessons from real-life events. Let's engage in a discussion about the importance of ethics in business and personal life. How can we as a community ensure that such abuses of trust are prevented in the future? Share your views and let's learn from each other.